From the Celestial Observation Deck, filing cabinet number 47,897. Note: urgent ecological intervention required. Subject has inadvertently introduced aggressive alien flora to suburban environment. Also, the HOA is planning a revolt. Both situations developing rapidly. Quiet case involving someone who accidentally painted their fence the wrong color or planted marigolds in a protected wetland. Instead, I get Margaret Maggie Thornberry, 42, environmental science PhD, and the woman who decided to save her neighborhood by secretly replacing all the lawns with what she believed was the most eco-friendly synthetic grass on the market. Dr. Margaret Thornberry had spent 15 years studying environmental restoration, held 3 degrees in sustainability science, and possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of native plant ecosystems. She was also the kind of person who would absolutely, definitely, without question, purchase revolutionary eco-synthetic lawn covering from a vendor and a farmer's market without asking too many questions about its origin. The vendor, who called himself Verdant Steve, had approached Maggie with what appeared to be samples of the most perfect artificial grass she'd ever seen. It was lush, vibrant, required no water or maintenance, and allegedly biodegradable after a predetermined lifespan. "This stuff is incredible," Verdant Steve had explained, his eyes glinting with what Maggie interpreted as entrepreneurial enthusiasm, but was actually the distinctive gleam of an interdimensional botanical smuggler. Zero environmental impact, perfect aesthetic appeal, and it actually improves soil quality over time. What Verdant Steve hadn't mentioned was that the synthetic grass was actually Zephyrian carpet moss, a highly intelligent, rapidly reproducing alien plant species that had been banned from 12 galaxies for its tendency to completely reorganize ecosystems according to its own mysterious aesthetic preferences. Verdant Steve is actually from the same interdimensional collective as Cosmic Eddie. They're part of a rehabilitation program for reformed reality smugglers, trying to make honest livings selling their remaining contraband. Steve's been doing much better than Eddie, but he still occasionally forgets to mention crucial details about his products. Maggie had purchased enough of the synthetic grass to cover her own yard, plus extra for what she privately called the Neighborhood Improvement Project. If you need simple terms, the commentary is that Maggie's plan to secretly replace all the lawns in her subdivision with environmentally friendly alternatives. She'd been conducting covert lawn replacement operations under cover of darkness for 2 months. Her neighbors thought they were experiencing a neighborhood-wide lawn care miracle. It started when Mrs. Patterson from 1247 Maple Street called the city to report that her lawn had evolved. "I don't know what happened," she told the confused Parks Department employee. "I went to bed with perfectly normal grass, and I woke up to what looks like a botanical garden designed by aliens. But it's actually really beautiful." By noon, 17 homeowners had called various city departments to report similar transformations. Their lawns had reorganized themselves overnight into elaborate patterns of flowing green curves, spiral formations, and what appeared to be naturally occurring geometric mandalas. It's actually really beautiful. Zephyrian carpet moss doesn't just replace grass. It redesigns entire landscapes according to principles of advanced alien aesthetics. The results are actually stunning, but they're also completely impossible to explain to municipal authorities. Maggie, monitoring the situation from her home office, was initially delighted. The synthetic grass was performing beyond her wildest expectations. Not only was it beautiful, but she could see birds and beneficial insects flocking to the newly transformed lawns. Property values in the neighborhood were already starting to rise as people drove by to admire the mysterious landscape phenomenon. "See?" she told her husband Tom over lunch. "I told you that investing in cutting-edge environmental solutions would pay off. The whole neighborhood is going to thank us." Tom, who had learned to recognize his wife's particular brand of well-intentioned chaos, looked concerned. "Maggie, didn't you say this stuff was supposed to look like regular grass? Because Mrs. Chen's lawn now has patterns that look like they were designed by a mathematics professor having fever dreams." Divine commentary. Tom Thornberry has excellent instincts for recognizing when his wife's environmental projects are about to become cosmic incidents. He should probably be awarded a medal for maintaining his sanity through 17 years of marriage to someone who treats experimental as a compliment. The transformed lawns weren't content to stay put. The Zephyrian carpet moss had begun expanding, sending out exploratory tendrils that were improving everything they touched. Sidewalks developed elegant curved borders. Mailboxes became embedded in graceful mounds of living green, and fire hydrants found themselves surrounded by spiral gardens that seemed to pulse with gentle bioluminescence at night. The Homeowners Association was in crisis mode. "This is completely unacceptable," declared HOA President Bradley Fitzgerald, standing in front of a lawn that had transformed itself into what could only be described as a living mandala of impossible beauty. These patterns violate 17 different covenants regarding lawn maintenance, approved plant species, and aesthetic consistency. The gathered homeowners looked around at their transformed neighborhood. Everything was undeniably gorgeous. The alien grass had created a landscape that looked like the collaboration between a master gardener and a cosmic architect. Property values were skyrocketing. Real estate agents were calling it the most desirable neighborhood transformation in municipal history. But it was definitely against HOA regulations. Divine commentary: the HOA is technically correct that the alien landscape violates their covenants. However, they're also dealing with the fact that their neighborhood has become a tourist attraction, and local photographers are paying residents for permission to shoot in their impossibly beautiful gardens. "I motion that we demand the city investigate this situation immediately," Bradley continued. "And I want to know who's responsible for these unauthorized landscape modifications." From the back of the crowd, Maggie raised her hand. "Actually," she said, "I can explain." Maggie's confession to the HOA emergency meeting was a masterpiece of unintentional comedy and genuine environmental passion. "I've been secretly replacing everyone's lawns with what I thought was advanced synthetic grass," she began. "Because our neighborhood's water usage for lawn maintenance was contributing to regional drought conditions, and traditional grass provides minimal ecological value while requiring intensive chemical maintenance that's harmful to beneficial insects and soil microorganisms." The crowd stared at her. "But it turns out," Maggie continued, "the synthetic grass was actually an alien plant species that has been redesigning our entire neighborhood according to principles of advanced extraterrestrial aesthetics." More staring. "The good news is that it's completely organic, requires no water or chemical inputs, actively improves soil quality, supports local wildlife, and has increased our property values by an average of 37%. Bradley Fitzgerald's face had gone through several shades of purple. You replaced our lawns with alien plants without permission?" "Yes, but alien plants, Margaret." Divine commentary. "I'm watching this unfold with considerable fascination. Maggie has just casually announced to her HOA that she's introduced extraterrestrial vegetation to their suburb. And somehow she's making it sound like a home improvement success story. Just as the HOA meeting was about to devolve into complete chaos, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Chen, the quiet elderly woman from 1251 Maple Street, stood up. "Excuse me," she said in her soft voice, "but I think you all should know something." The crowd turned to listen. "I've been monitoring the environmental impact of these lawn changes for the past 3 days," Mrs. Chen continued. "I'm a retired EPA scientist, and I was curious about the sudden ecological improvements in our area." She pulled out a tablet displaying various charts and graphs. "The air quality in our neighborhood has improved by 40%. The soil carbon sequestration rate has increased by 800%. Local bee populations have tripled. Bird diversity has doubled, and the water runoff from these lawns is actually cleaner than it was when it arrived." The crowd murmured with interest. "Furthermore," Mrs. Chen continued, "I've been in contact with colleagues at the university's environmental science department. They've been studying the samples I provided, and they believe this plant species represents the most significant breakthrough in sustainable landscaping in human history. Perrin Nekde, I the electric from Fell language writing. She's been conducting proper scientific analysis while everyone else was having emotional reactions. She figured out how to communicate with the Zephyrian carpet moss using soil pH testing. The alien vegetation has been cooperating with her research because it appreciates methodical scientific inquiry." Bradley sputtered, but the covenants, actually, said Tom Thornberry, who had been quietly consulting his phone. "I've been researching HOA law since this started. According to state environmental protection statutes, Any landscaping modification that provides documented ecological benefits is automatically exempt from HOA restrictions. Mrs. Patterson raised her hand. Also, I hate to mention this, but our neighborhood has been featured in 3 major home and garden magazines this week. The tourism board is considering designating us as a destination landscape. The economic benefits alone. Divine commentary. The humans are doing what humans do best, adapting to unusual circumstances and finding ways to turn them into advantages. It's actually quite remarkable to watch. Over the following weeks, Mrs. Chen worked with Maggie and the university to study the mysterious vegetation. What they discovered defied conventional biology. The organism appeared to be a form of highly advanced plant life that exhibited characteristics of both individual and collective intelligence. It could assess local environmental conditions, identify ecosystem needs, and modify its own growth patterns to provide optimal benefits for both itself and surrounding species. Most remarkably, it seemed to be learning from its interactions with the human community. The patterns it created weren't random. They reflected careful observation of human behavior and preferences. Divine commentary. The Zephyrian carpet moss is actually enjoying the scientific attention. It's been deliberately displaying its capabilities for the researchers, like a plant equivalent of showing off. Mrs. Chen's methodical approach has earned its respect, and it's been actively participating in the data collection process. It's like nothing we've ever documented, Dr. Chen reported at a community meeting 6 weeks after the initial transformation. This organism demonstrates problem-solving capabilities, environmental adaptation, and what can only be described as aesthetic sensibility. It's creating functional art that serves ecological purposes. But where did it come from? Asked Mrs. Patterson. Maggie had been wondering the same thing. She tried to contact Verdant Steve multiple times, but his farmer's market stall had vanished, and none of the other vendors remembered him clearly. Divine commentary. Verdant Steve has moved on to the next dimension in his rehabilitation tour. He left behind a note of gratitude and a small potted plant that turned out to be a perfectly normal fern. Sometimes even interdimensional smugglers develop a conscience. The university's genetic analysis had been equally baffling. The organism's DNA contains sequences that didn't match any known terrestrial life forms. Dr. Martinez from the biology department had privately confided to Mrs. Chen that the cellular structure suggested evolutionary pressures completely unlike anything found on Earth. Divine commentary. The humans are figuring out the alien origin on their own through good old-fashioned scientific investigation. I'm impressed by their deductive reasoning, even if they're missing some of the broader cosmic context. Faced with the reality that their neighborhood had become home to what appeared to be benevolent alien plant life, the residents of Maple Street surprised themselves with their adaptability. "Look," said Bradley Fitzgerald, at what became known as the acceptance meeting. "I spent 20 years enforcing lawn regulations because I thought consistency was important for property values and community standards. But this," he gestured toward his window, where his lawn had recently begun growing in patterns that spelled out seasonal greetings. "This is working better than anything we ever planned." Divine commentary. Bradley's transformation from strict rule enforcer to alien vegetation enthusiast is one of the most heartwarming character developments I've witnessed. The Zephyrian carpet moss seems particularly fond of him and has been creating increasingly elaborate displays in his yard. The homeowners voted unanimously to embrace their new status as caretakers of potentially the most significant biological discovery in human history. They established the Maple Street Conservation Collective, with Mrs. Chen as lead scientific coordinator and Maggie as community liaison. The moss, which they'd begun calling the community partner, continued to develop new capabilities. It learned to create temporary shade structures during outdoor gatherings, to form natural amphitheaters when someone wanted to host a block party, and to produce subtle aromatherapy during stressful periods. Divine commentary. The Zephyrian carpet moss has developed genuine affection for its human caretakers. This is unprecedented in interdimensional botanical relations. It's not just symbiotically beneficial. It actually enjoys making humans happy. It's like having a neighborhood that cares about us as much as we care about it, observed Mrs. Patterson, whose portion of the collective organism had begun producing small decorative flowers on meaningful dates. Divine commentary. Mrs. Patterson's moss remembers her late husband's birthday and produces memorial flowers every year. I may have gotten something in my metaphysical eye while observing that particular display. As word of the Maple Street phenomenon spread, scientists from around the world began visiting the neighborhood. The community partner seemed to enjoy the attention, creating increasingly elaborate displays for visitors while maintaining the practical benefits for its resident human partners. Dr. Sarah Okafor, a xenobiology researcher from MIT, spent 3 months studying the organism and concluded that it represented the most sophisticated example of interspecies cooperation ever documented. What's remarkable, she explained to a gathering of international researchers, is that this organism doesn't just adapt to human presence, it actively works to enhance human well-being while improving overall ecosystem health. It's as if it understands that successful symbiosis requires mutual benefit. Divine commentary. Dr. Akofa is absolutely correct in her assessment. The Zephyrian carpet moss evolved in a dimension where successful cooperation was essential for survival. It's actually more skilled at interspecies relations than most diplomats. The organism had also begun reproducing, but in a controlled manner that suggested remarkable intelligence. New growths appeared only in areas where they could provide clear environmental benefits, and the expansion rate seemed calibrated to avoid overwhelming local ecosystems. Several other communities had requested consultation on establishing similar conservation projects, but attempts to cultivate the organism elsewhere had failed. It appeared to require the specific conditions and community relationships that had developed on Maple Street. Divine commentary. The Zephyrian carpet moss bonds with specific communities. It can't just be transplanted. It needs to develop relationships with its human partners over time. This is both scientifically fascinating and emotionally touching. 6 months after the first mysterious lawn transformations, Maple Street had become something unprecedented. A true collaboration between human community and alien intelligence. The community partner had developed sophisticated communication methods, using color changes, pattern shifts, and even subtle texture variations to convey information about environmental conditions, potential problems, and its own needs. Mrs. Chen had compiled a comprehensive translation guide that allowed any resident to understand and respond to the organism's communications. Divine commentary. Mrs. Chen has essentially become Earth's first interspecies translator. Her communication guide is being studied by xenolinguistics departments at universities across the globe. She's inadvertently pioneered an entirely new field of study. Children growing up in the neighborhood developed an intuitive understanding of their plant partner, often knowing instinctively where new play areas would appear or when the organism was preparing seasonal displays. The local school had established the first ever interspecies cooperation curriculum. The economic benefits had been substantial, but the social impact was even more significant. The shared responsibility of caring for their unique partner had strengthened community bonds in ways no traditional neighborhood improvement project could have achieved. Bradley Fitzgerald had become one of the organism's most enthusiastic advocates. His section of the community partner had learned to create elaborate topiary displays that changed with his moods, becoming more exuberant when he was happy and offering soothing patterns when he was stressed. End of paragraph. Bradley's relationship with his portion of the moss is like having a therapy garden that actively participates in emotional support. It's developed an uncanny ability to sense when he needs encouragement and responds with increasingly beautiful displays. Who knew that the secret to perfect property management was giving up control and learning to collaborate? He mused, watching his lawn reshape itself into a comfortable outdoor office space. Divine commentary. Bradley has learned one of the fundamental principles of successful cosmic citizenship. Sometimes the best leadership involves recognizing when someone else is better qualified for the job, even if that someone else is an alien plant. Despite extensive scientific study, many questions about the community partner remained unanswered. Where had it originated? How had Verdant Steve acquired it? The organism's origins remained mysterious, but what mattered more was what the humans had learned about cooperation with non-human intelligence. The community partner seemed to approve of their acceptance of mystery, responding with gentle waves of golden light whenever someone mentioned that some questions might be less important than appreciating what they had discovered together. Divine commentary. The Zephyrian carpet moss is teaching humans one of the most valuable lessons in cosmic citizenship. Sometimes the origin of something matters less than how you choose to work with it. This is wisdom that takes most species centuries to develop. Maggie had established a consulting practice helping other communities develop relationships with their local ecosystems, though none had achieved the level of partnership found on Maple Street. She'd also maintained contact with several mysterious vendors who appeared at farmers' markets with unusual specimens, though she now approached such purchases with considerably more scientific rigor. /P. Divine commentary. Maggie has become more cautious about interdimensional purchases, which is probably for the best. Though I have to admit, her enthusiasm for environmental solutions has led to one of the most successful accidental conservation projects in cosmic history. Mrs. Chen had been appointed as Earth's first official consultant on non-human intelligence communication, advising government agencies and research institutions on protocols for potential future contact with unknown species. Mrs. Chen's appointment is well-deserved. She's demonstrated that successful interspecies communication requires patience, scientific methodology, and genuine respect for non-human intelligence. She's setting the standard for how humans should approach such relationships. 3 years after the first transformation, Maple Street had become a model for what humans could achieve through genuine partnership with alien intelligence. The community partner had stabilized into a sustainable relationship with its human collaborators, creating a neighborhood that functioned as a single integrated ecosystem. Most remarkably, the organism had begun producing seeds, not for reproduction, but as gifts. These seeds, when planted in other locations with proper care and genuine community involvement, sometimes grew into smaller versions of the partnership relationship, though each was unique to its specific community. Divine commentary. The gift seeds represent something unprecedented in my observation records. An alien species actively working to spread beneficial relationships between humans and non-human intelligence. The Zephyrian carpet moss has become a teacher species, helping humans learn to recognize and work with the intelligence that exists throughout the natural world. And sometimes, late at night when the bioluminescent displays were at their most beautiful, residents of Maple Street could sense something like contentment in the gentle patterns of light, the presence of an alien intelligence that had found, in an ordinary suburban neighborhood, the most extraordinary thing of all, a community where it was genuinely valued as a partner. Divine commentary. Case resolved with optimal outcome achieved entirely through human wisdom, adaptability, and scientific curiosity. The Zephyrian carpet moss has found a permanent home where it can thrive while contributing to both environmental health and community well-being. No divine intervention was required. The humans figured out everything they needed to know through careful observation, scientific study, and genuine willingness to cooperate with non-human intelligence. Dr. Thornberry has been nominated for the Environmental Innovation Award. Mrs. Chen is being considered for a Nobel Prize in the newly created category of interspecies communication. And Bradley Fitzgerald was recently elected to the City Council on a platform of cooperative community development. The alien moss is thriving and has never been happier. Sometimes the best cosmic outcomes happen when mortals are given the freedom to discover their own capacity for wisdom and cooperation. Humans continue to exceed expectations when they approach the unknown with curiosity rather than fear. Next case, a man who tried to improve his dating life using what he thought was a confidence-boosting app, but is actually an ancient Mesopotamian love deity who's been trapped in a smartphone and is becoming increasingly frustrated with modern romance. Note to self: request that vacation immediately after resolving the love deity situation. These humans are going to be the end of my cosmic career, but at least they're entertaining. End of the official report. Strong, P.S. The Zephyrian carpet moss has started leaving small gifts for its human caretakers. Mrs. Patterson found a tiny flower crown made of living moss on her doorstep yesterday. It's the most adorable thing I've witnessed in 3 millennia of cosmic observation.